We're recording.
Hi, everyone. We're back in full effect with Que Madre, Jess Alvarez Parfrey, and myself, Rosa Rizo-Centino. This is our belated Mother's Day episode. We
Mhm.
don't know what we're going to talk about, but it's going to be cool. So tune in.
Yes. It's been a while, and I'm really happy to be back. And I told Ana Rosa it's always fun to like maybe start with a card pull. So we're going to do that. I was also, of course, checking the astrologies and looking at some of the key transits that are happening right now. We're still with the sun in Taurus, that fixed earth energy, really grounding us into spring and new growth. And yeah, also letting things that need to die and compost back into the soil for some, refreshment of energy there. And we have the moon in Cancer right now, which is interesting. So some feels, yeah, that water energy. Ana Rosa, our Cancer queen. You're a mermaid, so that totally makes sense. That makes sense. And then we have Venus, planet of like love and beauty and friendship, in the sign of Gemini. So the twins, that chatty, communicative, intellectual, mutable air sign energy. And then we also have Mercury in that sign as well. So that's the planet of communication. And Mercury is going to be going retrograde on the 29th. And we are,
No.
yes. So we're in the shadow period right now, kind of getting like a taster of it. And we also have an eclipse, which is like always going to shake shit up. We have an eclipse on the 26th, and that's going to be happening on a full moon as well. So a full moon in Sagittarius and an eclipse, and that's meant to shake shit up. Doors are going to be slammed shut. New ones are going to be opened. Yeah, I got a message. Like I signed up for some email thing, and it was giving me my card reading. It was like, some things need to end, and you need to be at peace with that. And that's going to make the way for even greater joy, even more alignment. And so just kind of, I guess, allowing yourself, given this Cancer moon energy, the space to grieve that. And then again, open that emotional space for more joy and more whatever you need. So anyway,
So Anna and Elsa actually did know what they were talking about when they said, let it go.
let it go. Let it go. Yeah. All right. I'm going to draw some cards.
You can tell I'm the mother of a 6-year-old.
Yep.
I'm just happy that Moana replaced Frozen.
Me too. I was like, that's the one. Moana I can do. And Daniel, my husband, he knows all the songs. It's great. I love the crab. Speaking of Cancer moon, I love the crab song. I'm so shiny.
I love his accent.
Yeah, it's the best. 3, 4, 5, 6.
I love how you know so much about astrology.
I am definitely a student. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this practice is that you're always in that student mode. So I'm by no means an expert in the cards. I'm still very much learning and trying to figure out my own way of doing this practice that's authentic to me. But I really like this particular deck. It's definitely not the traditional deck. It's the Voyager Tarot. So taking a look at the Voyager space probe where they put the golden disc on it.
Yes.
Hey, it's humanity. Here we are. So it's very much about our cosmic hero's journey. And that's why I like it a lot. Because I'm a sci-fi nerd, so it speaks to me. All right, so the cards I pulled, let's take a look. First one that came up was Synergy. This card has been making its appearance. 6 of Worlds. That's a wonderful card about the magic of aligned collaboration, unlocking each other's skills and gifts, right? So that the collective state, like, it's almost unpredictable. It makes room for emergence. And that's why I love working and just being friends with you, Ana Rosa, because I feel like magic typically always happens whenever we just hang out and talk. And yeah,
Because it's like alchemy or something.
totally. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it for sure. Next one is Seeker. And this is the Child of Wands. And it's, yeah, that energy of like seeking knowledge and seeking yourself. And I think that's also very much, at least for me, speaking to the Sagittarius eclipse and new moon. Sagittarius is like the wandering philosopher who wants to find themselves in different places, very much about freedom. And so I find that to be a really important theme. Like, give yourself the space and the freedom to discover new things, let go of old habits so that you can form patterns that are more resonant and healing for you. Next card. Oh, this is one of my favorites. This is the Regenerator, the Sage of Cups. Yeah. Especially on this topic of Mother's Day and mothers, just like that regenerator role and what it means. What does it mean for you, Ana Rosa?
Damn, that's a deep question.
I know.
I think it's kind of what you were talking about earlier, composting the bad and making something beautiful, right? Because I mean, led a life that I've gone through a lot of stuff, and I feel like all of those lessons I'm able to employ in the way that I parent my daughter.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm really intentional about reminding her how intelligent and creative and wonderful she is. And I think, um, that intentionality of just doing that like on a daily basis and telling her that I love her, those things I think are playing out in the level of confidence that I'm seeing her have in school, because at first it was really hard for her having to do school over Zoom.
Mhm.
Um, but she's stuck with it, and now she's starting to read, and it's really amazing.
That's wonderful.
How about you? What do you think it is like?
Yeah, I think it's very much that energy that safeguards the magic of life. And that is especially resonant, being a mother and just thinking about, yeah, like how we need to educate our kids given the worlds they're going to be stepping into, right? And we want them to be able to lead, and we want them to have a knowledge of self. And Easton, he's so brilliant. He's really, really into clay and making sculptures. He is very thoughtful and will like pick me little flowers just randomly. He's like, for you. And then he runs away. So he'll just always surprise me with little bits of kindness. It's like covered in clothes right now. It's like over here. But he made me like a little clothing rack, like to hang shirts on and stuff. And he just like designs these things. So anyway, it's just like
Oh yeah, you posted on Instagram,
it's
maybe.
on the Insta. Yeah. I was like, yeah, look at my kid.
Yeah.
So regenerators are very much about honoring life and then passing on that wisdom and then perpetuating the cycle. And that's how we're going to heal our culture. So I really believe in these kids, and I want to just do as much as I can humanly possible to set them up for success, and then also make sure that I'm able to experience joy in this lifetime. Because I think that's an important thing to leave with our kids, the knowledge that we can be whole and we can be happy and we can be healthy. And that's why I fight for the world that I do, and I do it with you.
Speaking of regeneration, yesterday at the Junta Grande that we had for the Green New Deal on the Central Coast, somebody brought up regenerative agriculture and
Mm,
how that needs to also be a focus of what we do. So that's also what I was thinking about when you said that word.
absolutely. And yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's like a huge truth and like guide star in my own life, is just a relationship we have with the land. Because by healing the land, we're going to heal ourselves and heal each other. So looking to design communities, new cultures, economies that honor that principle of life. And
Mhm.
that begins with our relationship to the land. And that's going to mean transforming our systems of governance, this idea of private property, returning to the commons, like all kinds of things. And then it also means what? Land back. It means returning land to Indigenous stewardship. Um, yeah.
That's what I love about braiding sweetgrass. Her talk about the relationship between us and the land and how critical that is, because I think a pitfall that we go to and not so much you and me, right? But like the larger mainstream environmental movement is instilling fear in people, and that being the motivation for them to do certain actions. But that's, first of all, not very creative. And also, it doesn't talk at all about the relationship, right, that we have between us and the land. And that is really what is a way off balance that we need to correct, just for the sake of correcting it, not just because of the whole extinction part, but just because we need that relationship. We need to love our mother, and our mother loves us back and wants us, to thrive here, but it needs to be a reciprocal relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, and then this connects directly to the ways in which mothers and caregivers are like systemically and structurally undervalued in our culture, the mainstream, consumer capitalist culture that we're in. And that's the other part of this conversation, is how do we create healing by linking those two together into a coherent program, right? And for me, that's like that care, that culture of care. Like if we were to upgrade the system with a new program, be like culture of care program, and just like you would unlock the full capacity of our human potential. We're just running at barely, I don't even know whatever, the 0.1% that rules everything. That's the capacity we're at right now. We're using 0.1%.
Definitely.
Yeah. So next card is the Tower card. So this is very much like you got to jump. You need to trust in the universe. You need to abandon the old structures, and they're going to be burning down behind you, and you need to leap towards that which you are called to create, called to sustain. Yeah, totally. I think a big tower for me has been not putting myself last anymore, and finding ways to be more resilient in that. And then the next card I have is the Star. So that's about shining and honoring your unique gifts and the light that you bring to this world. Because we need everybody to offer that illumination so we can all see where we're going. Next card is the Stagnation card. So this is that smell that comes up when shit is not being composted, and it's starting to rot a little bit, and it's like, hey, help me. This is not okay. And yeah, it's when you're kind of stuck in old habits that are preventing you from growing, because you're not letting go of the old shit, Yeah.
So we need to get out of spaces that don't honor our humanity, our creativity, right? Like all the things that we bring to this world, that you were just talking about in the last card, that should shine, right?
Exactly. So if you deal with the stagnation, right, you're going to move the shit out of the way. It's going to go where it needs to go. And then you can have clarity. So think of like a river that's clogged with pollution. It's like, it shouldn't be that way. It's out of alignment with how nature works and cycles nutrients. And so once you're able to clean that, you can see through the water, you can look back at yourself. Hierophant. The Hierophant is like kind of master of life. They have gone through, they've failed, they've experimented, they've documented, they've recognized that their experiences are truly meaningful and worthy of acknowledging in terms of like building a pattern towards self-improvement, towards mastery. And so you need to make space. And this often means a little bit of withdrawal, not totally hermit energy, but just making sure you prioritize that space for your own self-growth, self-care, and personal development, because that's going to make you, more effective, especially if we're linking our energy back to the collective in a reciprocal way. And then the last card, which is a really important one, is equilibrium.
You pulled that one a lot.
I'm a Libra, so it's just like it's like the card for me. It's like the one that I need to hear all the time. Because I'll be honest, sometimes I feel like it can be really good at just writing shit as it comes, because I've had to learn how to survive and deal in that way. And then the equilibrium, in a way, it's like, what is the structure? What is the container that you're creating to honor yourself and hold your energies that are sacred, right? In a balance, so that you can shine most brightly, right? Like that equilibrium, like it's just so important. And that means balancing like the mental and the emotional, the spiritual and the physical, and then recognizing that the balance comes when you know how to integrate all of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah, equilibrium. All righty, so that was our card read. I'm going to throw it over to you, Ana Rosa, so we can get into this conversation that's going to unfold around the topic of Mother's Day and the earth, Mother Earth. Just we're casting kind of a wide net, I think. But those are kind of the anchoring topics.
Mother's Day is sometimes a tough thing for me to talk about, because my first Mother's Day was 2 months after I had lost Adelita. So it was really awkward for other people to know how to talk to me. Like, do I tell her Happy Mother's Day? Do I not? And for me, it was actually really important that people did say Happy Mother's Day to me, even though they couldn't physically, and I couldn't physically hold Adelita. And so it brings up a lot of emotions for me. And at the same time, it reminds me what a teacher Adelita has been for me on just how to remember not to take things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And that no day is promised to us. And so I think that's why at first when you and I started hanging out, you kind of sense this, I don't want to say frantic, but just like urgent energy about me, right? I want to do everything and I want to do it today. So I think that's something that I've had to try to, like, yes, that's true. We do have to be urgent. And at the same time, we need to slow down because of the fact that things are so urgent, right? And make sure that we're including everyone that needs to be included,
Mm-hmm.
and just showing everybody how much they are loved and how much they are such an important part of this movement. So folks are not interchangeable, right? Like, the fact that you exist in this world as Jess Alvarez Parfrey and all the gifts that you bring, like, that matters. So anyone who doesn't acknowledge it or realize what a blessing you are, like, off to the side, please. Because I think people need to understand just the worth of every person who's part of this movement, and that none of us can be discarded.
I really felt that. Thank you, Ana Rosa. And I feel the same. I feel the same way about you. And I absolutely have always just like admired the strength that you walk with, but also the willingness to be vulnerable. And there is a real power in an ability to tap into that and help create space for others to do the same, because that's how we're actually going to create change and transformation. And there's a real beauty and a necessity and a medicine in anger. And there's a time for that and a way to use that. And I guess what I'm curious about is just like looking at the ways, going back to like mothers, right? And there are many folks who can carry that energy, that maternal energy and nurturing. But just thinking about the mothers and the women in my life and like my ancestry, is just acknowledging how much emotion they carried and how often that has been used against women, and how often it's used to diminish or discredit you for being either intelligent or able to make good choices or be effective. I think what we're really suffering from is that split where you have those energies of like the objective and the emotional or whatever, they're at war with each other instead of being integrated. So healing the feminine, the divine feminine, that mother energy, for me, it has also meant like acknowledging the paternal or the divine masculine energy and how they relate to each other. Because that's how you get, going back to that regenerator card, that's how you get new life, right? And that,
Duality.
yeah,
It's duality. We need it.
yeah, we need that. What is your hope? Because I was like, I'm always fascinated by the reminder of Mother's Day's kind of radical history
Oh
and
yeah.
how it's been so lost and like buried under this more like consumer pressure thing to like give gifts and buy stuff. And we, gift giving is an important part of my family's culture. And it's just like, how do you give a gift? And this also reminds me of braiding sweetgrass. How do you give a gift when it's someone who's given you life, and how do we truly create a society that's set up to honor the people that are bringing life into this world and then caring for that life once it's here and nurturing it? It's not considered the most valuable thing in the current design of our society. How do we leave that behind?
Yeah, and I think it depends on the country where you see whether mothers are really honored or not. I feel like, for example, my daughter goes to a dual immersion school, and like they spent their whole day the Friday before Mother's Day, like making gifts, right, for the moms. And those are the most beautiful gifts. Like I treasure those. I will never ever throw those away, just that my daughter's hands went into making these beautiful like construction paper cards with flowers on them. Um and the fact that I got kicked out of the room so that she could make them for me without me noticing that she was doing it, since it was over Zoom. I just thought that was so cute. But then I heard from other moms that I've been talking to that at their kids' school, they didn't do anything for Mother's Day. I'm
Really,
like, that's interesting.
that is that's so sad. Like Easton was so sweet. He painted like a little flower pot and planted a little flower for me and made a little card. He loves making gifts. And yeah, it's an important thing to like teach our kids how to acknowledge people that they care about. And I know it's something that I've like I want to have a better practice of doing that, of like honoring people in my life. Um yeah, I think just sometimes for me personally, like I love receiving gifts and tokens, and I also really just value experiences with people. Like I'll take
Nuts, hot nuts.
hot nuts. Yes, I so dearly miss being able to hang out at little local bars in Santa Barbara with you, Ana Rosa, and plan and dream about what we're gonna do for the world and just like have a good time. I really miss it. But this is making me really happy. Um, so yeah, like I also want to talk about how mothers or just caregivers can show solidarity for one another. How do we do that?
I think it's also us being able to accept that care, right? Because I feel like even when it's offered, we're like, no, I can't take that. Um, like I have a friend who's going through a hard time, and I've offered like, let me watch your kids so you can go do what you need to do, and like go be with your family. And I can tell like she doesn't want to accept it because there's like a little bit of, I don't know if it's being timid or what it is, but it's just like being able to accept those offers, because like you as a mother have already been giving so much to your kids and to the world, and you should be able to accept, right, those offers from other people too. But it's so hard as women of color. We're not taught to accept the love and to believe that we deserve support. It's just like, okay, I guess we're in this alone. We got to figure it out. And It's about creating that culture of care so that it's not weird, right? When you get these offers of support and that's just comes to be expected.
Absolutely. And there's just so many messages that are constantly coming at us to say that we're not doing enough, that this is what a perfect mom is able to accomplish in a day, and this is what we should look like, and these are the trips we should be able to take, and all kinds of things. And I also feel like it can breed something of like competitive energy in nature, that can fragment relationships. And I mean, we all have a lot of different things to heal within ourselves because our shadows come out to play. They definitely do. And they're like, hey, remember me? You got some shit to do. You got some healing work to do. And I think what we do for each other when we're in community, because community isn't just like a shiny, always happy, bright thing. Like I'm thinking of the wonderful, like intergenerational support my family, when it was really whole, was able to have. And I remember those were early memories of like tias and grandparents and everyone cooking and there being a party and like the kids being able to, entertain each other. I feel like I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? They're remembering family. Da, da, da.
Was it, I don't know, maybe I'm just going off on a tangent, but when you were talking about like your tias and stuff, I was thinking about like just memories of going to Mexico
Yeah.
and being able to count on the fact that even if my mom was in another room,
Yes.
that I could like call on my tia for something, or that she would already be noticing what I needed, because
Yes.
people in Mexico, for example, don't treat it like, okay, well, if you're the mother and you're the father, you are solely responsible for the caretaking of this child. It's like, no, it's a community, a communal effort. We're all looking after each other, after our kids, and you don't even have to ask. It's just kind of known that that's the way it's going to be.
Totally. I think you got to like the kernel of truth I was trying to get at about like you were just so in sync that it would just flow naturally. There wasn't this weird energy of like, oh, I can't watch them right now. I've already watched them or whatever. It was just like understood. Like that's how family showed up for each other. And so like I guess community is not always a shiny, happy, it's always going to work out thing. Like there are conflicts, communication needs to be had, certain things like boundaries need to be established, right? I think there was a very clear pecking order in my family. It was like the eldest women, what they say went. So anyway, as
Oh,
we're as we're building new communities, right, where we're coming with different cultural experiences and different lived experiences, different traumas, right? How do we make space for the less than happy stuff? Because I also feel like conflict is a sign of growth if you let it be. We're often trained to run from conflict or to make something out of it that it doesn't need to be, that maybe keeps you in your old cycles and outdated lenses and ways of seeing the world. So yeah, I'm just thinking about the shadow stuff and like how we deal with conflict in a healthy way.
yeah, it's almost like people get comfortable with the things that they assume are happening when they're in conflict, instead of actually finding out whether those things that they're assuming are true and real, or if it's just something that's manifesting itself because of experiences that they've had in the past, trauma, right? Because trauma can completely change how you experience a situation. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. And just connecting this back to mothers, I remember like in my own family, like what we would call gossiping or chisme was a really important way for women to connect, to vent, to be vulnerable, to reclaim their power in small ways, right? Like the way we'd gas each other up. I just remember my mom and tias and like even grandma sometimes like doing that with each other. And it was really beautiful, and sometimes it could be toxic and not super healthy all the time. So it's like finding that those, I guess you would call them boundaries of like what is actually healthy and playful and regenerative and what is just keeping me tethered to, I guess what we would call more toxic ways of thinking and relating to others.
yeah, it could be a fine line, but yeah, I think maybe it just involves having honest conversations with ourselves and with each other to get to what those kernels of truth are. Um, and yeah, I think it's totally true that conflict can be an opportunity, if you're willing to go there and actually address whatever is manifesting itself. Um, but it's just how fear limits us so much. Like whatever we're afraid of, it's almost like instead of running away from it, we have to go toward it to figure out what it's trying to teach us.
I agree. I think that's I think that's a truth that I've like really come to terms with and have been doing my best to integrate. It's like the things that are scaring me, and I'm just like, there's maybe a reason why I need to walk closer to them. And part of that involves having real faith in myself and my own ability to deal with that, and to make something good out of the information that I get from that experience. Um, and for me, that's also meant grappling with ideas of failure, which I think a lot of mothers, a lot of moms can struggle with. I know for me, like sometimes scrolling through Instagram, this is a very classic kind of thing where we're like given these Instagram mommies, and I'm just like, dude, that's not my life. That's not what it looks like. But then also still being able to step past that and recognize the really beautiful, magical things that do happen in your life. Like, how do we let go of that judgmental, competitive, comparison based way of seeing? Because we've all been indoctrinated in that shit. That's my opinion, but
And getting out of the boxes, right, of what motherhood is supposed to mean.
yeah, exactly. And so that means also acknowledging the wide experience of motherhood that can occur, recognizing trans mothers, recognizing fathers that also hold the role of mother and are doing that maternal kind of nurturing work and care, extended family members. It's an essential function of our humanity to care for each other. And which brings up what's been going on in the Middle East, the state-sanctioned violence against the Palestinians, the ways in which our taxpayer dollars are being used to further the project of colonization, and dispossession from the land. And it's just heartbreaking. Like there's footage where you see the bombs coming and you can hear like women screaming and children crying out. And it's just like, again, we have to share information that's coming from the front lines so that people really know what goes on, because there's a lot of misconceptions and people saying it's two sides clashing. It's like there is no equity in what is actually happening there.
Palestine does not even have an army.
Yeah,
So this cannot be a clash. It's just crazy to me how long we have been listening to this narrative about how it's just like a war of equal sides and they're just, um, squabbling over religion when there's actually a lot more complexity, to it. And at the end of the day, the simplicity, right, of civilians, like mothers and children, should not have to fear for their lives, on a regular, everyday basis. How can this be complicated to people? And that's what is really hard for me to understand, that we are in the year 2021 and we are still allowing this to happen in our name. And the US has been the biggest supporter of Israel over all this time. And we should be getting our government to see that we're not going to accept this anymore. And it shouldn't be a fringe issue. Everybody in this country should be outraged about it.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, if you're hearing this, like now is the time to take um action in the name of justice. Like this is just, we can't continue with this cycle going back to that stagnation, that toxicity that kind of repeats itself. Like we are complicit, completely complicit in this shit. Colonization and the British and the way they interfered, like with cutting the idea of a nation state. This is what this brings up for me. And I think this is especially relevant to this nation that was built by destroying nations that were already here or attempting to completely eradicate. But obviously we have resilient and proud standing indigenous communities across the country that they need the investment and the support. Going down to that kind of local level, there are really beautiful projects, a lot of amazing work around food sovereignty. I mean, standing up for all of our access to water to make sure that pipelines are not contaminating one of the most precious things that we have on this planet. Yeah,
Well,
so
that it's a normal thing for petroleum companies to continue to ask for exemptions, from water policy so that they can contaminate the little bit of water that we have left, especially in California that's in a drought.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just crazy to me that we would just be allowing these big companies to, just extract our resources for what? For just their profit, for something that we know should have already ended. We only have what, less than 10 years to turn this ship around.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, the fact that they can even continue to apply for these exemptions to me is crazy.
And that's when I'm like, how do we get all of the moms, all of the caretakers, like, yeah, to hold the line here? Like, how do we organize ourselves? And there is amazing work that's already been going on in community, largely led by femmes, mothers, caretakers, especially in the BIPOC communities. It's like, how do we give folks the resources and the platforms that they need to do the work that they know how to do, the work in the name of life, that regeneration work?
Well, and then you can talk about universal basic income, right? So that
Let's do
people
that.
can do that.
So that's what I'm getting at. It's like, what do we need to do, y'all? So what is the platform? What's the package, the bundle, right, of policies? What are the projects that could be occurring at the local level? I think basic income, absolutely an essential conversation. There've already been successful pilots. We need to freaking do away with that really disgusting notion that if you pay people, they're going to become quote unquote lazy and quote unquote not contribute to the economy. I mean, sorry, whatever definition of the economy you're working under, it's destruction and it's death, and it needs to stop. So giving folks what they need to get their basic needs met will unlock, and this is what I return to, unlock the full potential of our humanity. It's going to be a care-based society as opposed to an extraction and exhaustion-based society.
Definitely. My friend Rachel has this really cool program that she leads in LA County where they pay people to take care of the trees in their neighborhood. And it's I feel like this is perfect for the Green New Deal that we've been trying to craft, right? For the Central Coast. Like there's so many cool programs that people have developed in the last few years, and we need to do it all. Like it's not just one or two, like we need to do it all. And I feel like people are so comfortable, and that's part of the problem, is that they're just okay with how things are. They don't use their imagination to see how it can be different for their kids, for their grandkids. And when we talk about Indigenous folks, and I identify as Indigenous, that we do it for the next 7 generations, right? It's not just about the here and now. And I think that's why we're in the situation that we're in, is that people have not been thinking about the next 7 generations. And so we're left now with talking about crises, right? And how do we get out of this crisis? But let's go beyond getting out of the crises. Let's talk about thriving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like we need to compile create a database or something, like, of all of these different solutions. Because you're right, like we can get really caught up with this sense of like fear, the sense that things are not going to work out. We can get really obsessed with that apocalyptic kind of thinking. I think that was really present with the Trump presidency as well, right? They were obsessed with that thing, like he's the Messiah saving us from the end. It's like, y'all are bringing the end with your ignorance and with your hatred, and you need to heal. And this man is not here for that. He doesn't care about you. He's here to extract from you and to get what he can for himself. And that's the thing. It's like we honor these false idols when we need to be honoring mothers, nurses, teachers, people who are working in supermarkets, people who are picking your food, people who are taking care of your children in any way, shape, or form, yourself. Like, we don't need to be honoring like these powerful men behind desks and shit. Like, we need to get rid of that iconography, like bust that shit up. And I would love to see more mothers in political office. Women, yes,
Absolutely.
but mothers especially should be running for office. And yeah, you've held office. I've done a little foray into trying to run for office. It's not very accessible. It was not designed for us. Let's put it that way. But you did some amazing work.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why we have finance reform too, right? If campaign finance reform happens where people can access funds to run campaigns instead of having to be dependent on these shady ass companies who, right, are the ones lobbying folks in Sacramento to do the wrong thing for us. And as terrible as Trump was, to me, it's just very indicative of what capitalism gets you. You know, like
Yeah.
this country has run through this greedy system. And so it led us to a Trump. And so now how do we get past that to something that will lead us to people who are in office because they actually care about the people and they want to transform their communities and use the resources that government has for the betterment of children and entire families and all of us, right? The queer community, Black people, Asian people, Indigenous people, working class people. That's what it needs to be about.
Absolutely. And like, we need that plurality of solutions coming from these diverse experiences and perspectives. And it's like, that's going to be the ticket. That's going to be what changes the game. And it's like, it's happening, but it definitely needs, again, going back to that release of energy and like cutting off the stagnation, right? We need to allow the old stagnant institutions, ways of thinking and doing to die. And how do we do that? How do we do that? Because it's often understood that there needs to be some kind of violent revolution for that to actually happen. Does it have to be that way, or can there actually be power and softness? Like, I struggle with this in my head. I'm like, does it have to be a violent clash, or is there a way to have a peaceful transformation that also is allowing the old systems to die, or or be composted?
Well, I think there's a lot that can be accomplished through direct action,
Mm.
and direct action is usually peaceful. So there are, and I think it's just about doing larger scale actions. And it's just hard for us to think about how to do that when people are caught up doing 2 to 3 jobs at a time, especially, here in California where it costs so much to live here. So how do we maybe use people's lunch hours, right, to do some education on issues, so that we can let them know what's going on in order so that they're ready to do direct action when it comes to it. Because if people don't know about issues, that they're not going to be ready to be moved to action. But if we're doing large scale education of, folks in their jobs so that they don't even have to go anywhere, or in their houses, that's why we used house meetings for the Green New Deal campaign, so that it's as accessible to them as possible.
I guess on this notion, I completely agree with you. Peaceful direct action and this notion of building, like, we need to say no and fight against the things that are going to be harming us, but we also need to be focused on the vision and actively building the things that are going to replace the old system.
Definitely.
I guess my question around violence was more like, I'm worried about the ways in which the state might respond. And again, this brings up Israel and Palestine, the ways in which the state might respond if it's actually feeling threatened by this transformation through even peaceful means. Right. That could occur. And this is something I do struggle with. And part of me is just like data. I think that this is something that I find really critical, that's like, I be able to own my data and have full security, but that doesn't really exist at all. Like, we're actively being mined so that We can have more targeted advertising. There's a whole database that's being built to predict people's political preferences. We've already seen how, the internet can be used to manipulate people's perceptions during an election with Cambridge Analytica. Like, I don't think that stuff's going to go away. So my question is, like, what's a way to intervene in these violent systems? Because that's what they're designed to do, is to be violent and extractive. And then with the policing, like, you have states that are trying to pass some ridiculous shit that's going to criminalize protests. The car thing, with people being able to run over protesters, and like, supposedly if they feel threatened, they can get away with running over people. So anyway, that's what I was thinking of when I said, like, violent, revolution.
Yeah,
Usually the violence comes from the state.
definitely. And that's what it's bringing up for me too, is what's actually violence on our part and what's actually self-defense.
Yeah.
Because I feel like now that I think the governor is ending the moratorium on evictions, the cities are going to follow suit. And so we're going to be dealing with mass evictions. So do we have folks on the ground ready to protect people from those evictions, right? To form a barricade around their homes so that they're not able to be evicted. And I think like those kinds of things are things that we need to be planning out because we cannot just have everybody homeless. And as it is, we already have a huge issue with so many people not having houses, even when like there's been studies done that in Santa Barbara, there are so many vacant homes that every person without a house could have their own home if they just occupied a vacant home.
Yeah.
So it's like, why do we have all these excessive resources that are not being used?
Because we have a speculative real estate market, and that goes back to our relationship to land and the ways in which it's valued is as a commodity. It's not seen as our mother. It's not seen as that which sustains life. It's seen as something that can be cut up into pieces and bought and sold and hoarded. The land is whole when it's able to feed and is able to be in relationship to the people who care for the land. And that's not really how our society is designed. And I could also consider myself to be indigenous, and that work of decolonization is definitely not a metaphor. It's about unsettling, it's about getting uncomfortable, and it's about an elsewhere, a place we don't even fully comprehend yet. But I totally believe it's possible to realize within our lifetimes, if not within those 7 generations that we're responsible for. And we are set, it is our task to set the way, to create the way. And for me, that brings up community land trusts. And you and I got to participate in Cooperation Humboldt's post-capitalism conference and be
good.
An amazing session, on regenerative economics, and a very real example of where land back is creating healing and creating all kinds of new opportunities for the WIAC community. So got to follow those examples.
Let's get these honor taxes happening.
Yeah, definitely. The honor tax. I think the Sogrete Land Trust is very much recognized for I believe they got that started with a tax to rematriate land and bring resources to Ohlone peoples. And it's, matriarchal, femme-led. It's, again, another example, like these little mushrooms that are popping up all over the place, composting and creating the new. How do we connect them all together? What's the network look like? There's so many networks and mailing lists that I'm on, and like I always struggle with that. I'm like, how do I create a more coherent experience of the part of the web that I'm on, that I'm sitting on, where you feel like these vibrations of possibility? I'm like, all these people doing all these things, and some of them talk to each other, some of them know about each other, some of them don't. I think you and I really like that, like meeting new people and then connecting them.
Yes.
I'm just going off, but I'm just thinking about like, how do we make better use of our networks?
Yeah, everybody needs to know each other and dream together and then put an action plan together and just do it.
I agree. I think what's real for me, it's like I could signal a real commitment by being like, this list of folks that I'm often CC'd on emails with, that I feel resonant with, we're working towards kind of similar stuff. We need to hang out with each other. We need to have gatherings. We need to plan camping trips. We need to strategize. Like, we actually do need to spend time with each other in person. I think that's how we make the most of our networks, is we stop letting them just be a name on an email and then they become a person that you've created shared experiences with. Like, that's going to create investment in continuing the work, I think.
Yeah, we need to build authentic relationships with each other and not have it just be like a transactional thing, which is what I think people in the past have really fallen into. That
Mhm.
does not help build a movement, right? Where I'm not just talking to you because I'm going to get something out of it. It's because we're building something together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what gives our movement staying power, are those relationships and that authentic understanding. Totally.
Yeah.
Hey, we've covered some ground, but where would you like to take this conversation next?
I want to hear how your Mother's Day went.
My Mother's Day was really chill. I was sad that I didn't get to see my mom. She's in LA. Um, yeah, she still needs to get her vaccine. We're just being careful, but it was nice. We just spent a really chill kind of day. We made orange chicken, which we make some really good orange chicken. It's like very tasty. I'm like, I don't have to go to a restaurant anymore. Like, it's just pretty legit.
Nice how your husband enjoys cooking.
He does. He's really good at it and it makes me very happy. But I think tonight we're gonna be lazy and get something to go from the little pub down the way. Um, support those local businesses for sure. Yeah,
I
like,
got to see my family from Mexico, which was really, really nice.
that's beautiful.
I hadn't seen them in like 10 years. So my tias, one of which I'm named after, Ana Rosa, and my prima Cari. So it was very nice. Um, it almost felt like it wasn't real because I hadn't seen them in so long. At first, I was asking them, wait, is this like an apparition or am I dreaming this? But it was real, and I'm
Aw,
going to get to see them again tomorrow.
that's really special. It's so important. And I don't know why it made me think of like this vision of having like a Mexican Mother's Day like festival, and you have like all the tias and like the abuelas and nanas like sitting down chatting, and then everyone cooking and música and everyone dancing, just like a bit like a family party that I'm thinking of in my memories, but just like times 50 with like a whole bunch of other families. It'd be so much fun.
I mean, we can try to make it happen for next year because by then I don't think we'll still be under shelter in place.
True. That's true. I would love to take a trip to Mexico with you and do like visit where my family's from, visit your family. That would be so much fun.
That'd be very fun. And
And
I
we
want to see the pyramids. I still haven't seen them.
we could, yeah, we could do that. And then I totally want to go to Tulum and Cancun and like all the places, get some mariscos.
Eat some good mole in Oaxaca, some mezcal.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that needs to happen. We're vision boarding this trip and it's gonna happen.
I'm going to start saving up the money.
Okay, me too. It's a plan. Treat yourself. But that's important. Like for me, also just spiritually, like that's my motherland in a lot of ways. I have many that come from my ancestors, but it's an important part of who I am. And like my grandmother, like the cooking that she did, like the way that she navigated her own femininity and her own masculinity, all kinds of things. Like she was one of the ones who was like always there to be my number one cheerleader and told me I was beautiful even when I didn't feel like I was or think that I was. She's like, no, 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 no.
You're
This is the truth. No, but she was always that person. And you could tell inside that she also struggled with her own insecurity and other stuff, but she was there to be that voice for me to be like, no, find your confidence. You come from amazing people. You should be, like you were saying earlier, like we all come from some lineage of strong powerful women and mothers, you know? It's important to carry that.
Here's the question though, did she brush your hair with mayonesa?
Yes. She would do a hair treatment. Yes. Yep. And she would braid
Her
my hair.
hard all the way through.
Yes. Yes. There was that. And then she taught me to do like the belt thing. She's like, tuck in your shirt, have your little belt. And she was very much into fashion. And there's a story that it was like her favorite story of me being a baby and like going through all her, she used to like always arrange her jewelry and her perfume and she loves having her little, what do you call them? Vanity with like the little thing set up. And I remember seeing her, I'm like, what are you doing, Nana? She's like, oh, nada, estoy vacilando. I'm just like playing around, whatever. And then I remember her telling me like, yeah, you were a baby and you had gotten into all my makeup, all my jewelry. And I came in and I'm like, Jessica, ¿qué estás haciendo? And I was like, nada, estoy vacilando. I was just like copying her, like what she was doing with her stuff. But yeah, I really miss my grandmother and I've definitely missed my mom. Like anytime I get on the phone with my mom, we end up like sometimes having like a 2 or 3 hour conversation. I'm like, I need to call my mom more. Like, you know.
Everybody, if you're listening, call your mom.
More. I know, and I need to do that. I'm like saying that.
I know.
I talked to her yesterday. I'm like, I gotta call you back, so I will. But yeah, just mothers and people who do that work of caring for us, nurturing us, reminding us of our worth. I'm also thinking of Pose. Oh my God. Have you been watching Pose? Yes, it's on.
My TV broke.
No.
My TV broke, so it's getting fixed right now. But I'm supposed to get it back this week.
Oh my God. Okay. So yeah, for mothers, watch Pose. Yes. Be a house mother. Protect your children. Pass on those values. Remind each other how fierce you are. Yes, Gloria, look at you. Hello.
She always makes her appearance during our episodes, so this would have been weird if she didn't come.
Hello. How are you?
Good.
I'm glad to see you.
Where's Easton?
Easton's with his daddy in the other house.
Why?
Because they're hanging out. I think they're playing video games or something. He misses his daddy because he works on Sundays. So when he gets home, he likes to see him.
She likes video games too.
Yeah.
She loves Mario games.
I know you two.
I have a Mario set of Lego.
Oh, wow. Easton would love that. Yeah, you two need to do the Switch thing. I got to send you I need to look up the code.
The friend code, yeah.
Friend code. Mm-mm. Shall we wrap up our episode? Because whenever I see Gloria, I'm like reminded. I'm like, all right, it's time to go be with the little ones.
Yeah, she lets me know when she's like ready to have me concentrate on her.
Yeah, I'm getting the sign, Gloria. Oh,
how shall we end?
How shall we end? Well, I mean, as always, it was a pleasure to talk with you. And like we said, we're getting back in the game and I'm excited for our next conversation.
Yes, same here.
Foot in the face. Okay, remember, honor thy mother.
Yes.
All right.
Her facial foot massage, I guess.
That's very cool. Okay, that's innovative.
See you later.
See you later. Have a good night.
Good night. Bye.